Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the third album from the Chemical Brothers, Surrender. So, we've made it to the last of their trilogy of 90s albums. This is the one that had the most mixed reviews out of those three, I think. But it's also easily the one of those three I spent the most time with as a high schooler. I went into this review hoping to give this one a particularly high recommendation, especially since it meant a lot to me back in the day. I still intend on doing so, however, I've started to take issue with some things about this album after coming back to it. The nostalgia factor is undoubtedly stronger than the first two because I listened to it more, and I feel inclined to be nicer to it as a result. Though, unfortunately, I will have to admit it doesn't come together quite as well as the first two albums. The tracks feel more disconnected even though there is a continuous mix, like those first two. Leaves some more variety though, which is good. But I also will have to admit, my personal enjoyment of this thing also goes all over the place with every listen. And I feel like that happened in high school too. Sometimes it was fantastic, sometimes it was decent, sometimes it was almost crap. I'm obviously not in the latter department right now, but yeah, there have been listens of this thing that just didn't click at all, and I basically only liked 2 tracks or something. But that was still like less than 10% of the time. I'm sure I've scared some people off already, but I still think this album is really solid. It's more fine-tuned to my personal tastes than either Exit Planet Dust or Dig Your Own Hole, even though both of those are probably better put together as full album experiences. So let's go down track by track. We open with Music Response. This is kind of the equivalent to block rockin' beats. Once again, we're starting with a fairly simple and accessible track with this cool generated voice saying the title over and over. And I'm off and on it. It's not the kind of track that works well with too many repeat listens. But then again, neither is Block Rockin' Beats. It's certainly catchy though, good way to start out, and there's one breakdown around the 3-minute mark that is awesome. Then we go on to Under the Influence, one of the most intense tracks on here. Not one of my personal favorites, it gets a little repetitive and there's not a ton of texture there, but it is the kind of thing there to please fans of Dig Your Own Hole. Reminds me of the middle section from that album that I didn't like, except more easily enjoyable. Next up is Out of Control, which picks up right where the previous track left off, but way better, thanks to the presence of Bernard Sumner of New Order singing. It's also a little repetitive, though not to the point of getting stale or feeling like it doesn't justify the 7 minutes that it lasts. Sumner's vocals help carry things along, and there is one awesome guitar breakdown in a ways in as well. And speaking of great guitars, Orange Wedge bases itself around a particularly tight guitar line. The bass line and synth playing are fantastic as well, and it's just an engaging little 3-minute interlude there. And then we get one of the big singles, Let Forever Be, kind of a companion piece to Setting Sun from Dig Your Own Hole, incidentally also featuring Noel Gallagher, and is the 5th track on its respective album. Interesting touch there. But I personally like this one significantly more. It's still kind of obviously inspired by the Beatles' Tomorrow Never Knows. Setting Sun was as well, but Let Forever Be is just a catchier and more memorable track. Easier for me to sing along to. And how does it feel like to spend a little life dancing in color? That's a pretty strong first couple of tracks, but they put what is arguably the album's centerpiece at the center of the album, the Sunshine Underground. This track is the album's equivalent to the Private Psychedelic Reel. And while I think that track is a little better, this one comes very close. It's a lot happier than that track, first of all. Probably no surprise given the title. But just like that track, it goes on for a long time, goes on a long, extended psychedelic romp that continually seems to build up on itself with each passing second, starting out slow and simplistic with its bell samples and flute loops, bringing in deep on the way vocals. Later suddenly moving in double time, involving one giant, noisy, atonal build-up, and then seemingly adding in some orchestral elements before finally coming down to earth at the end. Ridiculously amazing track. My only question is, why isn't this track at the end? That would have really finished this album off with a bang and been much more impactful than the ending we got, but I'll get to that. After such an insane high of a track, the Sunshine Underground was, we then get Asleep from Day featuring Hope Sandoval, and this is definitely the most settled track. However, it's also not one of my favorites. Sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't. There's some small problems I have with it. First of all, Hope Sandoval's performance on this track is almost completely passionless. She just sounds really bored on this track more than anything. Now, granted, this is probably on purpose. The song seems to be about being tired, so, you know, it's fine for what it is, but, you know, also directly related to this is the fact that this track seems to build up to something and doesn't pay off on it. You know, the fact that this track is right after the Sunshine Underground and we got such insanely great build-ups and payoffs on that track probably does not help. But I do often hear Asleep from Day and get hyped by the build-up halfway through, and then get disappointed at the track not kicking into high gear at the end. And it would have worked, too. Just look at Where Do I Begin? I mean, it's almost like the Chemicals were intentionally working out of their comfort zone with this track, and then just as they were about to do something, like, to hype people up, suddenly they gotta slap their wrist. No, we're not supposed to be doing this. I can appreciate it for being different, and it's great if I'm in the right mood, but more often than not, it just comes off as like a missed opportunity. Still, I don't skip it, at least not anymore. Thankfully, we then get to Got Glint, and I've always freaking loved this track. The ascending synth riffs that carry over the whole track are really fun and foot tapping. Give me some mild orbital vibes, and the vocoders constantly intoning black skin, brown skin, yellow skin, white skin are a nice touch as well, but it's especially that sparkly and shiny melodic drop that's drawn me in. Absolutely beautiful moments there. And then of course we get Hey Boy, Hey Girl. Probably most people's favorite on this album. If you can't get into anything else on here, this is the one that most people seem to gravitate towards. And yeah, I'm sure I will surprise no one by saying this is one of my favorites as well. Just a classic track here, from the banging and driving beats, to the intense but still melodic 303 synths, to the ridiculously fun DJ scratching in the outro, to the ever-catchy sample, Hey Girl, Hey Boy, Superstar DJs, here we go! One of their most popular tracks, and for damn good reason. Then there's the title track, which transitions perfectly from the previous track, but isn't as intense. Another happier and more psychedelic track. Not a lot to say on that one, it's pretty repetitive and doesn't have much to it, but keeps up the drive from Hey Boy, Hey Girl and never fails to put a smile on my face. And that leaves us at the ending, Dream On. This is yet another track which I'm on the fence over. Sometimes it's fantastic, and sometimes it's awful. If I'm not in the right mood, this track just seems to drag on forever, and the fact that you got Jonathan Donahue singing a literal lullaby, and an often irritatingly repetitive one at that. Sleep on, dream on, sleep on, dream on, sleep on, dream on, sleep on, dream on, sleep on, dream on. Ugh. Oh, and the fake ending. That's kind of a dick move, especially when you're sick of the track to begin with. That being said, weirdly enough, this is a track that works a lot better with your brain turned on. See, the thing is, if you ignore Jonathan Donahue, which isn't that difficult since he's almost mixed to the background, you'll find a surprisingly instrumentally dense track with a lot of cool sounds coming and going, all inspired by like 60s psychedelic and art rock. Like, maybe there's some Moody Blues influence in there or something. I bet the Avalanches were heavily inspired by this track and this album when they made Wildflower, even getting Donahue on board for multiple tracks. Though Wildflower is better in basically every way, but I digress. As a closer, Dream On is certainly serviceable and fitting, but it's kinda tiring sometimes, and not the most impactful way to close out. Again, imagine if you moved the Sunshine Underground to the end. Not only would that likely make Asleep from Day more impactful, it also just finished the album out on a bang. Of course, I'm too used to the current track listing for that to work on me personally, but it would undoubtedly bring this album up a notch. So, final thoughts on Surrender. I'll admit, it's far from perfect. its tracks, while often mixed together, don't often fit well together, and it's a huge mixed bag of styles that don't always gel well next to each other. And there are tracks on this thing I often have to be in a certain mood for, not to mention if I'm really in the mood for, say, Under the Influence, I'm less likely to be feeling Asleep from Day or Dream On. If you happen to think this album is terrible and One of the Chemicals' worst, which some people do, I feel ya, but it's not how I feel. I still think every track has something to recommend it, and as I mentioned previously, the nostalgia factor helps make up for most of my issues. Dig Your Own Hole is probably the best 90s Chemicals album from a more objective standpoint, just overall better executed and well put together, but personal enjoyment-wise, this is probably my favorite of their 90s albums. The bad tracks are still fun and still have plenty of good in them, and the good tracks are some of the best in their entire career. I'm pretty heavily nostalgia biased, and it could be better even with that bias, sure, but it's still a fantastic album by itself that I still definitely recommend, and I'm overall feeling an 8.5 out of 10. But of course, it's just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.